Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. And as always, I want to thank you for joining us, where week after week I have the most amazing leaders who share their insights with you and hopefully inspire you. And just know I do this work because I sincerely care about the C-suite leader to help them navigate their challenges and opportunities with confidence. And this week, my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Denise Brown, who has over 3 decades of experience in healthcare as a physician, CEO, and chief strategy officer, and is also a transformative leader who helps women in business learn how to prioritize and avoid maternal overwhelm. A thought leader in self care activities for women. She brings her expertise to books for successful women. She has amazing degrees and also married to her childhood sweetheart, Alex, for over 28 years and celebrates a high school graduation with Hank as well as son, Will. Denise, welcome to the show. I can't wait to have this conversation with you.
Glad to be here. It's great.
So, to my listeners, obviously, I bring on people who have had those roles, those functions as CEOs, and also a strong voice. As we were chit-chatting here, I love Denise's voice. I just wanted to bring her insights, her journey to you, as well as digging deep into the Fairy God Doctor's Guide to a Good Life that she wrote. But Denise, I'm going to pass it back to you to share a bit about yourself personally and this journey that you've been on.
I love that. Thanks, Deb. It's been a wild ride, and I'm having the best time ever. I've had a very unique career path, I think, and really you couldn't call it a path. And I certainly wouldn't have ever anticipated it as a sort of, medical school graduate way back in the day. I was on a pretty predictable journey. I went to Berkeley as an undergrad and then University of Chicago for medicine. And I had this sort of mentality that, I would finish and go do my residency, be a doctor, blah, blah, blah. That would be about it. I did medicine. I practiced clinically for about 15 years, ran a practice, rolled that practice into a much larger physician organization. And at sort of the 10 to 12 year mark, I had an opportunity to do some kind of business development, to kind of take my show on the road, if you will. I had come up with a rather novel approach to taking care of people in the hospital. And on the advice of a mentor, said, I really think you could bring this kind of model to lots of other people. And we're like, well, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I'll try that out. And so little by little, I had an increasingly large role in this large physician organization. Ultimately, as their chief strategy officer in charge of business development, and took that organization from about $600 million dollars in top line revenue to about $1.5 billion. And then was recruited by a private equity firm to go and be a CEO for one of their portfolio companies, which was really something I had not really ever entertained, but sounded really fun at the time. Now, I'm condensing literally 30 years into about sentences. But took that, turned that business around, took that to a successful exit in the fall of 2023, and then decided I should sort of just take a year off because that at that point I had been literally all gas, no brakes since about 1997, and took a year off for the first time ever. And I was interviewed by a woman who was writing an article on exit entrepreneurs and what was it like and how did I feel about it and what was my legacy. And I was like, what are you talking about? My legacy and my business have nothing to do with one another. My legacy are the people that I've gotten a chance to make feel better along the way. I mean, I'm still a doctor person. And she was like, that's really interesting, we should explore that more. And that was kind of the spark, if you will, for me to write the Fairy God Doctor's Guide to a Good Life. Now that, and I stopped working in January, and by March I was like, okay, what are we doing next? So I ended up joining a consulting firm. I work with startups, CEOs mainly as a mentor, and am now a general partner in a large healthcare investment fund. We have about $600 million under management. And, in a million years, I never would have anticipated that journey. And so I think that's part of, the guide to the good life is just being open to the world, see what happens.
So, okay, very, very interesting pursuit. But is it one of those things where you were pulled or you just started getting to a juncture where something has to change, and then you intentionally started reaching out in these opportunities? Because some people beat their head against the door, they
Yeah.
don't like where they're at, and they try to push, push, push to get their next opportunity and hit these walls. But yours seemed to have flowed. So how was that for you?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting and it's almost a mindset thing. So and I don't know that one is right or wrong or
Yeah,
what happened. I mean, one has obviously been righter for me, if you will.
yeah,
And that's really just being kind of very curious and like interested in people and talking to lots of other folks and trying to learn as much as I can about them and also their industry and how it is that they do things and what makes them sing is the way I kind of try to think about it. And so um I've never been a person who, is can't or shouldn't or those sorts of words don't really apply to me. In my book, I talk a lot about the death of my mom as sort of when I was 25, being really sort of, obviously profoundly traumatic, but really inspirational because I sort of got to jump ahead to I'm going to do what feels right when it feels right, and I'm not waiting because life is short. And so I think that's always kind of influenced everything that I've done. It was never like, well, that's not what is done, or that's not what you should do. It's like that's what feels right for me, so I'm going to go ahead and go after it. And so I've just done that. So when given an opportunity, rather than kind of sit back and say, oh, well, I don't know if this fits perfectly. Let me do this long, kind of analysis. Does it feel right? Great, let's give it a rip. Like I can always just turn back and do something else. So I think training as a physician, you learn that you make the best decision you can at the time with the information that you have available in the moment. And then you reframe and
yeah.
restructure based on new information. And that doesn't mean you're a wiffle waffler. It just means that more information's come to light and now you adjust. So I've always been kind of adjusting and really just having just the most fabulous time. I'm also very happy to say what I don't know. And I love to learn from people. And so I think that kind of openness makes for a great leader, but it also makes for someone you want to have on your team. And
Yeah.
it's been really fun.
I mean, there's so many things in there that, again, trained as an engineer, trained as a physician, it's more black and white. Yes, you have to make decisions based on best information. We're not always taught to listen to your gut or listen to your heart or let curiosity lead the way because society may say that's not practical. And so, whenever I've had to be within a box, I feel constrained. What I really love that you brought out, and I bring this out in my thought leadership, is that N apostrophe T, the unt. I can't, I shouldn't, I've not, because we're holding ourselves back based on our own mindset or societal norms. And then you show up that way to the world, and then those opportunities just don't show. But if you say, well, I believe and I think and I can because, well, I figured it out in the past, that changes the whole mindset of being able to move forward. So I tell everybody, get rid of that N apostrophe T. It doesn't serve you well.
Amen.
So what was it like being a CEO for a year and a half? Because I know there's so many people I meet this, I say, hey, you could be a CEO, you could be a VP of operations. And they say, no, 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 I've never done that. Tell
Mm.
me what that was like for you when given that opportunity.
Well, like drinking from a fire hose, really. I mean, and I mean, and I think that's true of any new gig that you have, right? Very easy to get overwhelmed, very easy to drop back into, especially if you're an operator, so easy to kind of drop back into your hold on to everything patterns, right? I'm going to do it all myself. I know how it's done this, and really kind of hold on tight. And I think that I had learned as I, increasingly managed larger and larger teams of people that you really kind of have to let go, trust your own judgment for who you've put into place. But that was never more clear to me as taking on the chief executive role versus, strategy or, chief development officer, et cetera. And you just kind of have to decide to trust yourself and all of the things that have put you into the seat in the first place are going to keep you in the seat as long as you sort of don't go back into this kind of scarcity pattern. And
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest challenge as you move up, in an organization is that you want to keep doing what got you there, but that won't get you where you're going next,
Exactly.
and how to kind of and I'm going to say relinquish control, because I think we all have this, desire for control. And as you sort of ascend the corporate ladder, if you will, you have less and less of it. And so how you deal with that uncertainty really determines your success or failure, I think. And so for
Yeah.
me, it's less about certainty and it's more about clarity of purpose, of vision, of why I'm here. And if I can stay focused on the clarity aspect, then all of the other pieces kind of sort themselves out. And so I think that was kind of the biggest change. There's also obviously a tremendous sense of responsibility for the people and for
Yeah.
all, those are different. Heavy is the head who wears the crown type thing is true. But again, if you kind of hold true to your own sort of individual
Hmm.
truths, then that sort of settles down, kind of in the end. But yeah, it's not an easy transition to make. But I think that is true from going from, say, like a director of ops to a VP role, or from a
Hmm.
VP role into the C-suite. Like each time you have to kind of give yourself a little more grace, but also more sit in the fact that you kind of what you're doing. and
This
and
is
you know
beautiful. And again, I coach others but it's hard when you're in that place to trust yourself, deal with uncertainty, focus on purpose, trust the process. It's the only thing that'll get you through with sanity. I do want to shift gears so much
yeah.
into your book because for those of you watching on the YouTube channel, she's got this beautiful image of her book on her shelf here. And um, curious about the book cover because so often when I interview authors, they're usually under the control of a publisher that dictates what the cover should look like. Three colors, very blah, blah, blah. And there's a very artistic element to what you have there. So tell me a little bit more about the design.
Well, we went around and around because it is sort of a business book, but I would say it's a business of living book. And I'm the fairy god doctor. I've been sort of the fairy god mom to a lot of a lot of young people, girls, boys, I guess now men and women as they get it up into their 30s. And I just wanted to make sure that I had a magic wand on the cover of my book regardless. And so we went around and around. And so I have my magic wand there, and my fairy god doctor in this. And then, oh my gosh, all of the colors and the this and the fonts and all that stuff. It's so fascinating to me. Not something I know much about. But you always have a friend. So one of my fairy godchildren, she does all the like art for Netflix, like all the
Oh,
movie
wow.
posters and all the really cool stuff. So working with the publisher, blah blah blah, kind of dull, kind
I
of boring.
know.
Like okay, but and so I was just like, Robin, girl, like help a sister out. And she was like, okay, I like this, I don't like that. Here's what I want to. And she just was like, she's great at what she does, and so that's another little recipe for success, right? You don't have to do it all. You can have it all, but you shouldn't try to do it all. You go find someone who's good. And so Robin was like, I want sparkle, I want a wand. And I was like, yes. Yes.
So it's very interesting. So when I think about you again, just getting to know you a bit, you followed a tried and true path about being a medical doctor, high risk, black and white, lots of intellectual horsepower. But then I see through all the colors in your studio, in your office, very colorful. Are there two personas to Denise? I'm just curious.
No, there's always only been one, which
Okay.
which is great. I think it made me a heck of a doctor. I did a lot of just sick people and a lot of end of life care. And I think you can find joy and humor pretty much anywhere if you decide to look for it, and spend a lot of time with people as they literally lay dying, and I've laughed the hardest with them than I probably have with anyone. And I just think life is a very fabulous experience, and I refuse to
Love
let
it.
it not be. So, and that's not a toxic positivity thing. It's just I think people are fascinating. I love them. I love getting to know anyone and everyone, and that curiosity that drives you as an engineer. Why does this work?
Yeah.
or why is this broken? Like those, that curiosity you can bring to every facet of your life. And the idea that you would be one way this way and one way here, like what a lot of energy that takes.
Oh
I
gosh,
don't,
tell me about it.
I
Yeah.
don't, I don't need to spend my energy that way.
And so I think many, many years, and this is something I think my audience often struggles with, is that I've got to be a certain way in order to get to a certain prescribed goal. And when you're not living exactly who you are, speaking the way you want to, I'm actually a very fast talker and I talk with my hands, but I have to be a little controlled behind the podcast mic. But when you can't be your truest self in all aspects of your life, home, community, and work, to your point, it does pull a lot of negative energy. And that's why so many people get burnt out. Hence why I am so glad I am in my own business now to be and do the person that I'm meant to
Yeah.
be. So let's
But
shine
I
a light
think
on
you
the, go
can
ahead.
take
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you can take that and decide to not let it burn you out, right? If you
Yeah. Yeah.
decide to show up and bring your best self to the party, whether it's at work or at home. But that takes some courage to
It does.
decide to do that. And the courage isn't in um, not being brave enough to do it, but being brave enough to not actually care what everybody else thinks. That's the hard part.
That was a hard one for me to get over because you
Yeah.
want to make everybody happy. You want people to like you. I'm over that. Hopefully, most people like me. Let's talk about the
If they
book. What was
don't,
it?
they can click away. Who
I know.
cares?
I've had a few hate messages, and it's like, okay, move on. I must be doing something right to finally get some hate messages. What inspiration for the book? Tell me about what inspired you for it and what's it about.
Yeah, so really, this really a delightful woman said, "What's your legacy?" And I was like, "Well, gosh, I should spend some time thinking about that." And then I realized that if I was going to leave a legacy of anything, it would be how to live a really good life. Because so far, 53 years, I've lived a really good life. There's been a lot of crappy things that have happened, but that's okay. We continue on. And so I sort of wrote it down for like 7 prescriptions for a good life. And it's not the good life, it's a good life. Everyone gets to kind of decide on their own, but how to sort of choose satisfaction over success to be driven not by those societal expectations, but by your own heart. And I don't mean that in like an ooey gooey way, but like in the quiet of the evening, like what really brings you joy? What makes you feel like this was a good day? Like what is that? Like, and sitting down and really being honest with yourself about that and then getting really specific about those things. And for me, like my 3 words are specificity, clarity, and savagery. Like, and once you decide what matters to you, then you must be relentless and quite honestly savage in the pursuit of that, period. And so I started kind of articulating what these prescriptions were, and I realized I was kind of onto something. I have a lot of stories from women I've either worked with directly or mentored over the years, patients that have really kind of blown my mind and made me see things in a different way. And so I tried to weave those as well as my own kind of wacky life story into these 7 prescriptions. And those are my prescriptions for a good life. And it's just been really fun to kind of see it go out into the world.
So obviously, I want people to look up your work, The Fairy God Doctor's Guide to a Good Life, and get your copy. But let's just give people a little snippet of the book. Is there one particular prescription that you like to share with the audience?
Well, I mean, I think for what we're talking about here, I would say probably 2. That is choosing satisfaction over success and figuring out what that is. Because by all intents and purposes, I tick all the boxes for success. Stanford physician, da 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 da. Da. That stuff doesn't, number one, it doesn't keep you warm at night. And number next, like it doesn't, if it doesn't bring you joy, who cares? And the anecdote I would give you is I was a my mom had died. I went off to residency. I just got married right before I started residency, and my husband finished his doctorate way faster than we thought. So here I was at the end of my first year of marriage, and my husband had accepted a teaching position on the other side of the country. And Alex and I had already been going back and forth across, like he was at Stanford, I was in Chicago, he was in, I mean, we were never in the same place. But after kind of 9 months of marriage, if you will, now suddenly he's off at Vanderbilt and I'm at Stanford, which is a preeminent place to do internal medicine, right? I very successful. But I was lonely, and I'm in the middle of the night. I'm taking care of this girl, Claudia, on the bone marrow transplant unit, and she'd failed two bone marrow transplants. It was obvious to everyone, sadly, back in the late 90s, that she was going to die from her disease. And I would go by and see her on my way home because I just wanted to check in on her, say hi, whatever. And she said, Denise, why are you here? And I was like, well, I just came to say goodbye, like, hope you have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow. She's like, no, 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 that's not what I mean. Why are you here? You're always talking about Alex. He lives there. Why are you here? And I thought, I got in the car and I was just like, it mattered to me, like my ego. It was like, I am at Stanford. I am the blah, blah, blah. But I was miserable. So the next day I went to my program director and I was like, this is going to sound really bonkers, but what would it look like if I tried to like do some of my rotations at Vanderbilt? Would that be possible? I
Yeah.
didn't say I have to do it. I said, would it be possible? And he literally said, no one's ever asked us that before. Let me figure it out. And so 2 weeks later, we had come up with a way for me to go back and forth and do stuff. Like, so I chose satisfaction, what made me happy, over that kind of like external metric. And that's just kind of the first of a long series of deliberate choices that I made for my own satisfaction, for my own self,
Mhm.
rather than the expectations of what's been really fun is in doing that, I've ended up with even more accolades than I probably ever would have had if I'd just kind of stayed.
So let's talk about that, as that seems to be one of your leading prescriptions and most meaningful to you. Have you ever had a chance to share those insights with maybe somebody you're mentoring or somebody that's crossed your path? And just curious, what was the impact of that prescription for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I don't think I'll give it away, but I had a woman that I was not even really working with. I mean, she's a daughter of a friend of mine,
Hmm.
and said, would you mind just talking to her for a few minutes? High-powered lawyer. I mean, you name it. Like she went to all of the places, right? And she's on track in her Manhattan law firm to be kind of a, top rainmaking partner, all of the things. She gets married, she decides to have a child, and now suddenly all of that stuff that seemed like what she was exactly shooting for, like the luster's off the lamp a little bit, and she was really kind of adrift because she felt like those were all of the things she was supposed to be doing, right? The big dinners, the rainmaking, the late at night. But what
Yeah.
she really wanted was to be at home, with her husband and her kid, and like those. Not like she was giving anything up. That was what she was really afraid of. And I said, okay, well, let's not go at the problem. Let's go around the problem. Like, what parts of being at the firm do you like? Oh, well, I like, and I was like, okay, what do you not like? Well, I don't like having to be out every night doing these dinners, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, how do we make both of those things happen? Because both of them can happen.
Hmm.
And so, kind of with my guidance, she decided to become the operating partner, not the
Yeah.
rainmaker, not the one going out for the dinners, but the one who kind of worked a regular set of hours
Hmm.
so that she could do both. She could bring all of the facets of her life together. So, those are the kinds of I like to call them conscious and deliberate concessions. And concessions people think is a bad word. I
Yeah.
don't think it is when it gets you what you want, ultimately, deep down.
So refreshing. And I think so many of us, and I'm going to, even though your book may have an angle towards women, I think men and women across the spectrum feel this at some point in their life. Like, why am I doing this? I was told this is the right thing to do, and I'm getting burnt out, and this may
Yeah.
not be what I'm doing. I mean, even now, I am constantly reevaluating. First of all, I love podcasting. This may be the last thing I stop doing, if I decide to close my business, because it gives me so much joy
Mhm.
to this creative medium and get to meet people, learn, and share with others. But there are other things that I've been now reevaluating. It's go, go, go. It's, I want to do more speaking. I want to be on bigger stages. And somebody has talked to me and said, yeah, and then what happens when you get to that big stage? So what? And constantly looking for that external validation when, you know what, I could just stay home and make cookies and, cook for my community, do more curling like we talked about before.
Yeah.
Those things give me joy, community and connecting with humanity. If I can do it via my craft, in terms of the consulting and the drop-in CEO, I would do that as well. But if it doesn't check that box of joy and elevating humanity, it does go against me. It does drain
Right.
my energy, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest, right? You gotta work, you gotta pay the mortgage, you gotta
Yeah.
pay the bills, right? I mean, there's crap you have to do. Um, but I do also believe that there are ways that you can figure out how to do that crap differently,
Uh-huh.
um, to kind of bring all of that together. And so that's sort of my big number two prescription is there is no balance, so stop looking for it. You will never find it. You will spend a lot of time and energy, trying to imagine it, but there just isn't, right? Some days are diamonds, some days are coal. You are always yourself. So if you've had a crappy morning fighting with your husband or your kid or whatever, you can't help but that comes with you. You wherever you go, there you are. I think being conscious of that makes you a much better leader.
Hmm.
Makes you not forgiving in the sense that, oh, I'm going to give you a hall pass, but just recognizing people have a lot of other things going on. You never know what's happening until you're, in their own moccasins. So being able to sort of articulate to your team or whatever, listen, there is no balance. So if you need to go at noon to take somebody to the dentist, just ask. Like, there's no reason to feel uncomfortable. And I say that to the my mentees, if you will, too. Like one of the classic examples, I did a book club at BCG, Boston Consulting Group, and one of their big issues was like they had this morning staff meeting at 8:30, which is a great time to have an all hands, except that it isn't. I mean, if you have little people at home,
Hmm.
it is the worst possible time to have a meeting. And, because you're trying to get out the door, you're getting so and so to school, you're, trying to pack a lunch, then you got to get in the car, like all the stuff. And I was like, well, did any of you ever ask if you could move the meeting? And I get like literally like blank stare. Oh, these are some of the smartest people on earth.
Yeah.
Like, would it be so hard if the meeting was at 9:30? What would that look like? And they're like, I don't know. I said, so here's my mentality, just like I asked my program director, not I have to move the meeting or can you move the meeting, but would it be possible for us to adjust the time for the meeting? It's a very difficult time in the morning for a lot of people.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
What kind of asshole is going to say no to that, right? I mean, be like, sure. Okay.
Makes sense. But what I want to do now is just shine a light a little bit on the work that you're doing now, because this is a place where I know that my listeners have enjoyed this conversation, listening to your insights. But if there's somebody out there that you would like to engage with, what is it? Tell me more about the work that you're doing now and who might you want to have a conversation with?
Absolutely. So I kind of wear the mentor hat in a variety of different ways. I do some stuff with a group called Tribe, which is actually really fun. It's predominantly for startup CEOs, very affordable, kind of facilitated coaching, if you will, in a group setting, which is fun. And then every now and then I'll take a one-on-one person to kind of work with as a mentor. Um, it's only when it makes me happy. I have to tell you, it's not what I do to, pay the bills. So I think that actually brings an interesting kind of freedom to it, because it's very much like, are we a fit? Could I bring something to you that would kind of help you kind of embrace this sort of next step in your journey? And then otherwise, most of what I do are podcasts like yours or group salons where I sort of get a collection of people together to talk about a topic. Like right now we're talking about graduation. What does that mean,
Mm,
as a parent, as a person kind of working, like what are the milestones? We have so many when we're young, and then we sort of don't have any more after that. Like how can you create your own kind of
mm,
sense of graduation and achievement in your life? So
beautiful.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun. So, I mean, I have my website. You can kind of check it out. There's ways you can kind of click through to see, if we're a fit. But also like for me, my book, the mentoring, like it's more of a give back. It's the stuff I wished I could have had access to,
Mm.
when I was of a certain age. Now that I'm older and crustier.
I mean, it's very similar for me is wanting to leave a legacy or a lasting
Yeah.
impact. I talk about that to CEOs. It's you can get certain results in the short term. You can grow a business. On the other hand, people won't remember you for the results, but they'll remember you for how they made you feel or the impact that you've had on their lives. So
Yeah.
I ask everybody out there, just like We've been talking about what is your legacy? And regardless of where you're at in your career, think about it. What is your legacy? What is the impact you're making on yourself, your friends, your family, society? Because that's what's going to live on beyond
Absolutely.
this life that we have.
Absolutely. That's the guide to a good life, right? That is the good.
This has been a lovely, lovely conversation. I know you talked about reaching out to your website, but I'll give you one last shot. Any last words you want to have with your audience before we bring this to a close?
Well, I mean, I think we all have the capacity to live exactly the life that we want, and you just have to have the courage to decide to kind of go for it,
Mm,
and quit thinking about it. Action is what is required, and so today is the first day to start. And pick my book up on Amazon or wherever you buy your books, and maybe that helps. I hear you can listen to the Audible at 1.5 speed, and it takes you about 3 hours. So, unlike many business books where I'm like, oh, I love the beginning and I love the end, and the middle was like
eh.
garbly. I try to go, super concentrated. It's 170 pages. It'll take you literally an afternoon to read. But I think if you apply some of what you can learn, has lasting effect. So,
All right. Well, Denise, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that I got a chance to know you.
okay.
It's not the last time we're going to have a conversation, but I just want to wish you well and continue success. And thanks for being a great guest.
Thanks, Deb.